Hello, college football fans, and welcome to our special 50th episode of College Football Throwdown. I am your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined by my dad, Peter Schmitz, and a very special guest.
Hey, how are you doing today? And our special guest?
AJ Schmitz.
AJ is here.
Hello, everyone.
That's right. We've got AJ Schmitz, my dad's brother, my uncle. He was on a podcast from this past summer when he was in Traverse City, and so now he's back. You guys are both going to the Nebraska-Purdue game this weekend.
That's right.
Go Big Red.
So we are currently at Turkey Run State Park, just south of the area of West Lafayette in Lafayette, Indiana, just a few hours south of there, enjoying a beautiful fire and a wonderful evening after a fine meal brought to you by AJ with traditional buffalo steak and just wonderful, wonderful food. Had some halibut last night from Alaska. That's where AJ's from. So it's been a nice week of meals.
Sounds like it. You're making me jealous just listening.
That's the idea.
There we go. All right. So for this special 50th episode, we're going to talk about some general college football stuff, preview our thoughts on the potential playoff picks for the committee before next week when the first rankings will officially come out, as well as getting AJ's opinion on all the Nebraska stuff that's been happening and new AD and all that stuff. But before we get into all that, I believe you two have some beverages for us.
Yes, we do. We've been anxiously waiting, having made the mistake. 1, 2, 3. All right. Having made this of premature openings in the past, I wanted to make sure. So we were disciplining each other. It was amazing. The instinct was to just go ahead and open because we were both thirsty.
Right. All right. So, as I said, we're going to dive into the Week 8 games, so the previous week's games first, some of the big ones. Unlike Week 7, which had a lot of big upsets amongst ranked teams playing unranked teams, this week was a little bit more calm in that regard. Although some of the scores, I think, were kind of surprising. I got the chance to be in a bar watching the end of the first half and the entirety of the second half of the Penn State, Michigan, and the Notre Dame USC games, both of which ended up being pretty dominant victories.
Yes, exactly, and particularly the Notre Dame USC game was quite impressive in that. That very quickly went to 28-0, and was really a whitewash. USC was never really in that game at all. There was a point in time where after an initial flurry from Penn State, Michigan came back and got it close, and it looked like it was going to be a nail biter. But then in the second half, of course, Penn State kind of pulled away again. But those are two big time games for kind of defining the direction of a few teams, including USC. That's a team now that may still win the Pac-12. I don't think they're out of it, but it's much less likely where they're headed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was definitely impressive to watch, especially knowing that Nebraska's going to be playing Penn State here in a few weeks. I'm worried about that game for sure. Yeah, and definitely to see Notre Dame. They lost early in the season, which had some people kind of wondering about their playoff chances, but they lost by 1 point to Georgia. And this upcoming week they play NC State, which is going to be another big game for them, another top 15 caliber team. And so they have a chance to potentially make a playoff bid if they go undefeated from here on out.
Absolutely. They play Stanford later in the year too, and that's another good quality opponent for them. And I feel like there's one more beyond those two that as well. So yeah, definitely if an 11-1 Notre Dame team is going to find its way into the playoff one way or t'other. I just think that's a fact.
I believe it's Miami. I think that they play as well.
No, didn't they already play them? I think they already played them.
Oh, you might be right. Okay.
And they lost. they lose to them? No, they've only lost
No,
once.
they only lost to Georgia.
So they beat Miami. I think they already beat Miami.
Right. Yeah. So I guess you're right about that. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're getting to the playoff talk next. But another game that was interesting, relevant to Nebraska fans, is the UCF Navy game where UCF won 31-21. Scott Frost pulling out another W.
Yes, and so now he's still undefeated on his season. Did miss 2 games because of the Hurricanes earlier in the season, so his season totals are a little skewed because of that. But definitely puts him in a position. In fact, AJ and I were just talking about it, where he's got if he wins the games he should win, he's got 1 game against South Florida, which is a team that's ranked ahead of him. But if he can find a way to win that one, then they could find themselves undefeated. They might only be 10-0, but they'd be undefeated at 10-0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that would be impressive for sure. And then as well, there was quite a shootout of a game with KSU versus Oklahoma. I was watching the highlights of that one, and it looked like in the fourth quarter there that just got into a back and forth. One scores a touchdown, another scores a touchdown. Interesting that K-State pushed Oklahoma that far.
Absolutely, and that's been kind of Oklahoma's MO this year has been they have played to the level of their competition every time they've played. They've played low to lower to the K-State or even a Baylor, who at this point is winless, I think. And they didn't beat Baylor all that badly, and yet they beat Ohio State and they rose to the occasion there, and have really done a great job. Other than their one loss to Iowa State, which is inexplicable, but typical of Oklahoma in recent years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you think that's a sign of a team with like lots of talent, but maybe a lack of like that focus?
Yes, I think that's true.
Okay. Yeah, I think that.
Oh wow. Okay.
So that's the week after next.
Okay, so the Miami game hasn't happened yet with Notre Dame. You are correct, Alex.
Aha.
Yep.
There we go. See, yeah.
Wow, that'll be a huge game.
Yeah.
Huge game.
Right now they're 8-9.
Yeah. Well, Miami's ranked. Yeah, Miami's ranked in the top 10 right now too. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're ranked 8th, and Notre Dame's 9th, or vice versa.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. I think Notre Dame's strategy has been, since they're independent, to play a bunch of difficult non-conference opponents so that they can make the case to the committee that their strength of schedule is really good for their chance to get into the playoff, which would have to involve not including a conference champion. Right,
that is correct. That's not new for Notre Dame, of course, but right. Yes, that's how it plays out in today's circumstance. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so talking about the upcoming games, where I mentioned one, Notre Dame, NC State, that is going to be a big game for both of those teams for their divisions, their playoff hopes. But I would say, without a doubt, the perennial game, both for us as Big Ten fans and for the nation, is the Penn State-Ohio State game.
Yes, I would agree. That is huge.
How do you see that one going, Alex?
Where is it? Is it at Ohio State?
It is at Ohio State. Yeah. That is correct.
Okay. In that case, I would give Ohio State the edge. Honestly, when we're going to talk about our playoff thoughts here in a bit, right now I think it's kind of a toss-up for me between Penn State and Ohio State. I think it's going to be one of those two for sure in the Big Ten that comes out on top.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Alex. And you make a good pick in that Ohio State at home certainly gives them a huge advantage, but they did lose to Oklahoma earlier in the year at home. Yeah. And so they obviously have a weakness that they can be beat at home. It's not like that's a huge advantage for them. And Penn State is a very talented team and coming off of a tremendous,
beating,
a win. So their confidence has got to be as high as a kite, going into that game. But Urban Meyer is a heck of a coach, and if I had to pit Urban Meyer against Penn State's coach, I'm choosing Urban Meyer every day and twice on Sunday. So from that standpoint, I would tend to agree with you. I think the home field plus Urban Meyer this time of year, and against the. But boy, Barkley is such a difference maker. that he might be the guy that just swings the pendulum. So that's a tough one to call, but I would agree with you. I'm going Ohio State. How about you, AJ?
I'm going the opposite way. I'm thinking I'm thinking Penn State big. 2 touchdowns or more.
Wow, bold.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's going to be big. I think Ohio State was, even though they kicked our tails, they are a team that looked real poor against Oklahoma. And Oklahoma is a good team, but they have been beaten
by Iowa State.
Which looks pretty good. I mean, Iowa State played well.
Yep.
But then again, this last week, Pete was just talking about, sometimes they play down to their opponent a bit. But when they had to go into Columbus and play Ohio State, Oklahoma just kicked their tail.
They did.
And I think that Penn State's a whole lot better than Oklahoma. And I think that they're going to go in there and do the same thing Oklahoma did. And that's and they beat them by more than 2 scores, didn't they?
Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very comfortable victory.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. And I think the same thing's going to happen with
Interesting.
With that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I've seen people though talking about how, like, with JT Barrett and the team in general with Ohio State, that they've kind of grown since that early in the season, and now they seem to be in a bit of a groove. Now this is going to be a big testing point for them for sure. But given that and the home field advantage, I think I'm going to give it to Ohio State by 3 points or something.
Yeah.
It'll be close.
Okay, well, that's the beauty of it.
That's good.
I love it.
That's good.
Yep. And that's the thing is that, no matter what, that's the defining game in the Big Ten. Whichever one of those teams wins that is absolutely gonna be the perceived front runner for the Big Ten championship from here on out. And now here's another thing. I was able to watch and gain some commentary from ESPN. Did a 1-hour special on the college football playoff a week before the first rankings came out. They just kind of had a 1-hour roundtable with all their guys that they normally have, on Saturday mornings and stuff, talking about the key teams and stuff in that ranking. And what was interesting to me was they did a huge summary conversation at the very beginning of the 1-hour program about Wisconsin and how they were the poster child for somebody who didn't play anybody, and was sitting there in the top 10, but heretofore untested, and saying, what do you do if Wisconsin, who really does not play, they don't play Ohio State, they don't play Penn State, they only play Michigan. That's of the top 3 teams in the Big Ten East that you would argue, they only play Michigan. And if they find a way to beat Michigan, then what do you do with Wisconsin? Because they could get themselves into the Big Ten championship undefeated and sitting fat high in the rankings, right? And what happens then? Because does the committee freak out about an undefeated or even a 1-loss Wisconsin team that ends up winning the Big Ten conference somehow? They get to the game in Indianapolis and they win. Then what? Because they don't have the gravitas in the other games to justify it. Hell, for that matter, Alabama's the same way. Alabama has played nobody and probably won't most of the year because they avoid some of the teams that have shown themselves to be the best. I don't think they played Georgia unless they play them in the conference championship game. So there's some questions about that. Now, obviously, with Alabama, there's no question. They win the conference. They're getting in. There's no doubt. But with Wisconsin, there's some big questions.
I think if Wisconsin was undefeated and they did it and they pulled the upset on either Ohio State or Penn State, I think it would be very hard for them to refuse them if they're undefeated and a conference champion at that point in the season. If they have 1 loss and you have like Notre Dame who has 1 loss,
there you go.
Well, that's the point. You could have a 1-loss Oklahoma. Right now TCU's undefeated. If they win undefeated and won the Big 12, I mean, there's some scenarios there, and then you've got out west. You've got in the Pac-12, you've got a Washington team. You've got Stanford. You've got I don't know. Stanford lost twice?
No,
or not.
so
They just only lost once.
Yeah.
So they've only got one loss. So there's some Pac-12 teams there that are in the mix. I mean, it could get really ugly where you have a bunch of one loss, including a one loss Notre Dame. That would make that very, very interesting.
yeah. Well,
Clemson, one loss.
Right. Well, yeah, Clemson's got the one loss. I wanted to bring that up just in terms of like going through, the conferences and who we think is going to win the conference and, where that leaves the playoff discussion. Because for me, the one that's the trickiest is the Pac-12 because you've got Washington, Stanford, and Washington State all with one loss right now. So I would say that if anybody is going to be left out right now, it looks like it would maybe be the Pac-12 because you've also got the Big 12, which is in a bit of a similar situation, but they've got TCU, who's currently undefeated. So if they can win out, then they'll probably get in.
Yes, I would agree. TCU undefeated gets in, no doubt. But if TCU were to lose, and now you got a one-loss Oklahoma team, they get in because they beat Ohio State.
Ohio State, yeah.
And that's going to bring a lot of weight. So I think that works. But if somewhere along the way Oklahoma were to lose again, like they almost did against Kansas State, and they fall away from the discussion, then the whole kit and caboodle rides on TCU.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could see the Big 12 falling out of it if Oklahoma's lost one more time, and they still have to play Oklahoma State. They have some games they still have to play. They have to play TCU, right?
No, actually, TCU. Well, sorry, TCU beat Oklahoma State already. TCU's big game,
but not Oklahoma.
Right, they have to play at Oklahoma. That's their big game near the end of the year.
Yeah.
So let's say Oklahoma loses to somebody else, then plays TCU and beats them. Now you got a 2-loss Oklahoma team that can't be in, and then you got a 1-loss TCU team that lost in their big game. Yeah. And then they play again because now this year they have a conference championship game.
Right.
Even though they only have 10 teams.
Right.
So now TCU and Oklahoma play again. And that's just, I mean, I think they could screw themselves because they could take that TCU team and end up giving them 2 losses. And you're not going to get any credit for Oklahoma to beat TCU twice. I mean, I could see that blowing up their face, and the Big 12 is left out again.
Yeah, well, I honestly didn't know that they had added a championship game until I was doing the research for this episode, which I think is smart, not only because it's a conference championship game is just cool in general as a fan, but then also obviously for the playoff chances, they've gotten screwed the past couple of years, partially because they didn't have that game. But like you say, there's a scenario where it could backfire on them as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
But anyway, but you're right. I think after that, then the Pac-12 is another one that is on that edge as well, because they have a bunch of 1-loss teams that could one more loss and they're out.
I could certainly see where 2 Big Ten teams could get in there, which has happened in the past.
That has happened.
I could see Penn State and Wisconsin both getting in. If Wisconsin beats Penn State,
yeah,
and it's 13-0, Wisconsin's in.
Right.
How do you take a 12-1 Penn State team and not put them in? Like, what was it, 2 years ago, or was it 3 years ago?
Ohio State.
When Ohio State and
what was it?
Michigan State
yeah,
were both in. Was that 3 years ago? I want to say it was.
Right.
It was the year we beat them, so it was only 2 years ago.
2 years
It
ago.
was
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then last year, Ohio State got in over Penn State, and then people kind of said afterwards that maybe Penn State was the better team and they should have gotten in.
Right.
Well, they should have. Didn't they win the conference championship?
They did win the conference championship, but they got their ass kicked in the Rose Bowl. Not ass kicked. That's inaccurate. They lost in the Rose Bowl then to USC in a shootout where it was just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Right.
One of those crazy games. But yeah. So yeah, there's some really interesting scenarios that still are there to play out. That'll make college football interesting certainly in the coming
next
weeks.
Month. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to go over real quick. Let's all give our predictions on conference champion of the 5 conferences, and then where you think Notre Dame is going to be at the end of the year. and what the committee decides. So I'm going to go ahead and say Alabama for the SEC, Clemson for ACC. Since I'm predicting Ohio State's going to beat Penn State, I'm going to say Ohio State for the Big Ten. I'll say TCU for Big 12 undefeated, that they beat Oklahoma and they win the rest of their games. And then a one-loss Washington out of the Pac-12 and a one-loss Notre Dame. I was saying that I haven't done the research. That there might be schedules conflicting there.
You're going out on a limb there, buddy.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
and like Mr. Conservative, you're a genius.
Like I say, there might be some schedules converging there that make that impossible, but I think that could all work out. In which case, I think that a one-loss Washington in the Pac-12 might get left out, but that's just one team. Then you've still got Clemson, Alabama, OSU, TCU, and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
But if TCU is undefeated, I feel like you can't leave them out. Which in that case, I think Notre Dame would have to be left out in that scenario.
No, I don't. That doesn't happen. No way. Let me give you mine, but then I'm going to argue about yours. Here's the Notre Dame can't be left out at 11-1. If they've beaten Stanford, USC, they lost to Georgia by 1. They
beat NC State.
They would have beaten NC State. They would have beaten Michigan State, who's now ranked 16th. There's just no way you're keeping Notre Dame out at 11-1. There's no way. So you're now looking at excluding TCU, or frankly excluding Ohio State or Clemson. Clemson's the one that lost to an unranked Syracuse. Okay, so even though they win the ACC, you lost to Syracuse, who's unranked. Okay, so that becomes huge in my opinion, and I think maybe Clemson gets kept out. The national champion. I know that's hard to fathom, but there you go. That's what I'm suggesting. I think here's my picks. I actually think Miami is going to end up winning the ACC. I'm predicting Miami as a little bit of an upset to win the ACC. I agree with you that I think Ohio State wins this Big 12 championship game. This game this weekend against Penn State, and then goes on to win the Big 10 championship game against Wisconsin. So I think Ohio State wins out and goes to the playoff as well. Okay, I think because Miami's undefeated, they are the representative of the ACC, and if Miami is undefeated, that means they beat Notre Dame, so Notre Dame's out. So then, and then you got TCU versus Oklahoma, and boy, that's the hardest one for me. The hardest one for me to figure out is the Big 12, and because I've seen TCU a little bit, I haven't seen them enough, but I just don't perceive them to be an undefeated team, and so I predict TCU gets beat either at Oklahoma when they play, or in the Big 12 championship game. And it ends up being an Oklahoma, one-loss Oklahoma that ends up representing the conference as their champion, okay? And in the conference in the playoff. So there's Oklahoma, and then Ohio State, and then Alabama, and then Miami. And like you, Washington ends up winning the Pac-12, but is left out.
Right, but you just described TCU losing to Oklahoma in the championship game, right?
No. TCU losing to Oklahoma in the regular season, and then Oklahoma beating them in the rematch of the conference championship game. Because they're going to play twice in my scenario. Because unless Oklahoma loses again, I think Oklahoma will end up being designated as the second best team after that season's over, and then they play each other.
Right.
I think that's how it would work.
Yeah, makes sense.
Although, no, it wouldn't work that way. I'm wrong, because their other loss is in conference against Iowa State, so they wouldn't get to play them again. It would be Oklahoma State against TCU. Okay, I'm going to change. I'm now after figuring that out, it's got to be TCU. TCU's my 14.
All right, there we go.
They won't see Oklahoma twice. If they beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma, they won't see them a second time.
Right. Good point. AJ, what is your thoughts on this?
Well, I want to go over the ACC quickly first. And Miami's still got to play Virginia Tech, who's the 13th ranked team in the nation at this point also. So I think the chances of Miami winning out, going undefeated is not really there. I'm going to go Clemson with that. In the Big Ten, Penn State. In the Big 12, I don't think it matters. Out there on the West Coast, Washington, I think is going to be the Pac-12. Let's see.
Alabama.
And then Alabama, of course.
Right.
But that's it.
Notre
Dame, nothing. Now, I predict they'll lose every of their last 4 games.
All right. Fair enough. But even with the Big 12, even if TCU is undefeated, you think that they won't get in over a one-loss Washington?
I don't see them beating Oklahoma.
Okay.
Whether they play them once or twice or however many times, they're not going to beat Oklahoma.
Interesting. Okay.
So, therefore, that takes them out, and Oklahoma's already – the Big 12 is going to be out again, even though they're going to play a championship game. I don't see them.
So your 4 teams?
My 4 teams would be Alabama, Clemson, Washington, and Penn State.
Yeah. Got it. Pretty similar to last year, except for Penn State.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, it is exactly the same.
Except for Penn State.
Yeah, and it should have been, in my opinion, it should have been Penn State last year. That's what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. All right. So that was fun. Now I think we're going to transition into the Nebraska side of this 50th episode podcast.
Okay.
I believe we discussed on a previous podcast, that podcast from the summer, where we were talking and we all had our predictions for the season, and Dad and I were on the optimistic side of like 9-8 wins, and I think AJ, you said like 5-7, and we said, I think he's looking on track. So now that we're here at week 8 of the season, how do you feel about your prediction?
Right on schedule.
Well, it looks to be right on schedule, but I got to tell you that I'd like to revise that and actually increase it by a game. But I still think the overall feeling that I had going into this season, and I've actually had for 2 years, is that this staff is not going to get it done and can't get it done. But I got a good feeling. This is a game this weekend that I thought that they were going to lose, and now I have a different opinion of that. And it's probably just because I'm going to the game, but I've got a few stats here that I'd like to go over with you at some point.
Now's that time, right?
All right,
Alex?
we'll go over that.
Let's do it.
I'm thinking. There are some stats that I'd like to throw out there. We've had Penn State and us have had 2 common opponents, of course, Rutgers and
Do you mean
Wisconsin.
Purdue?
Yeah, Purdue. Purdue and us have the same common opponents, Wisconsin and Rutgers. And in the Rutgers game, of course, we beat Rutgers and they lost to Rutgers. That's the only real stat in that one. The rest of that, the actual stats themselves, Purdue did a good job of moving the ball, as you saw all game long in that game. They had almost 200 yards of passing, which is pretty good in the Rutgers game, and almost 300 yards of rushing the ball, whereas we didn't fare anywhere near as well as that. But we still won by 10 points, and they got beat by 2. Their quarterbacks just seemed to be out of kilter throughout the game, and they didn't complete but 50%, just slightly more than 50% of their passes. And I think that and they threw a couple of interceptions, which were big in that game. They were about ready to score both of those times, and then they throw up the interceptions. But I just think that with that the Purdue versus us on that, it's kind of a wash because they really piled up the yardage. We didn't. We won the game. They didn't. But what really comes out to me is the what we did against Wisconsin and what they did against Wisconsin. It was quite a bit different. They were only 45% in their passing, 13 for 29 for only 155 yards against Wisconsin. And they threw 0 TDs and 1 interception. They rushed the ball 26 times in that game and only got 66 yards. So they had a total of, 221 yards of total offense against Wisconsin, whereas we were 19 of 35 in that game, and that was just 2 games ago for us. Lee was 19 of 35, which is 54%, 1 touchdown, 1 interception for 271 yards, which is a darn good day. I mean, overall, that's a pretty good day. We got our asses handed to us, but it had nothing to do with the offense, I don't think, for most of that. Another thing to consider in that is the last quarter and a half, our offense really didn't do much in that particular game, and our defense really took it on the chin. But we also rushed 26 times, which is the exact same number that Purdue ran against them. We rushed 26 times against Wisconsin, and we got 110 yards. That isn't great, but it's a whole lot more than 66. Okay, the last little bit of stat that I'd like to bring up is out of the last 2 games, Tanner Lee has begun to come out of this throwing interceptions like crazy phase that he was going into the previous 4 or 5 games. Against Ohio State, he was 23 of 38, which is 60%.
Right.
He hadn't done that. And 60% isn't great, but against a good defense like he was playing against, that's pretty decent. And he threw for 303 yards, 2 TDs, no interceptions. There's the key right there. No interceptions. So overall, the way that Tanner's headed in the right direction, I'm thinking that the offense will be too much for a improving Purdue defense, but I don't think that they've played against an offense that can throw the ball around like we can. And I'm just thinking that Tanner's just coming into his own at this point. And I think he's going to put some points up on the board. I think that we can rush against them, win. And it seemed like the offensive line is just finally starting to get some rushing yards going. They didn't do all that well against Ohio State, but they did okay against Wisconsin, which was real good. And they did well against, of course, against our other common opponent, Rutgers. So if our defense can play anything at all, I mean, if they can play anything at all like they did against Rutgers or against Illinois, I think that we win this game.
Well, and I think we have 4 players who have starting experience this season that have been injured over the last few weeks that are all coming back this week.
Yeah.
So
Kalu,
because of the week off, we're coming into this game against Purdue healthier than we've been in 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, easily. Yeah, when you get Kalu is going to be back for at safety, which is
and Morgan on offense,
and Morgan Stanley, is going to be back. Okay, so we're talking about these guys are getting healthy. If they come with any kind of pulse,
passion,
if they come with any kind of pulse, I see Nebraska winning this game outright. And I told Pete earlier that if I had a bookie, I'd be betting on them because I'll take that 6.5 points. They want to give it to me.
That's right. They're 6.5 point favorites right now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe we'll have to find that bookie.
There you go. Oh, don't get too confident now. But
what do you think of all that crazy talk from your Uncle AJ?
No. Well, I love all the stats you gave, and I remember us talking about those on the podcast. Obviously with the Ohio State game, some of those yards that he was getting in the second half came when they weren't, they were already up by 42 points or whatever it was.
Right.
So they weren't playing their top defense there, a little more prevent. But in the Wisconsin game, that's what's frustrating about it is that in the first half, we were the better team, honestly. If we didn't have that interception there, that was so bad, we get another touchdown there. We had the missed field goal. We were doing pretty well in the first half, all things considered.
Right.
And so I agree that we definitely have the capability on offense. My wonder would be if, Diaco's, as Dad puts it, bend but don't break defense is going to be enough to stop them on offense if they've got something clicking.
Well, I maybe I'm being influenced by AJ, but given all of AJ's information that he's just shared, and he and I have had some conversations since he's been here in the campground with us, but I would agree that I think the combination of us getting healthy and having 2 weeks to prepare has given another opportunity. I have a feeling you're going to see a more aggressive defense from Nebraska this week than what we've seen from Diaco, because I think he recognized. In fact, AJ was just quoting this grandiose comment that Diaco had in a recent post practice media event, where he basically said, I want to have the best defense in the country. We want to be the best. That's our plan, our expectation. That's where we're headed. And that seems absurd for somebody who just gave up freaking 60 points, to Ohio State or whatever, could have. But the bottom line is, if Diaco takes that to heart and chooses to just be a little bit more aggressive with his mentality, I think he's got the players to do it. And if he did that, I think it would translate to really desirable results for us. So I'm going to be optimistic like AJ and say, in this week against this team, Purdue, at this time, given our circumstance, we are going to win we're going to win the game, and I think our defense is going to play unusually well compared to the way it's looked this season, because I think Diaco is going to be more aggressive. If Diaco is not more aggressive and continues to play this patty cake shit, then we won't do well, and I'll be on board to see this whole group go away.
One more thing that I just remembered that I forgot to bring up when I was talking about that stuff earlier is Chris Jones is listed as the number one corner again at
really?
Yes, at the boundary corner.
And he's been injured all year. He's not played for us all season.
Well, he played in the Ohio State game, but he didn't start.
Oh, really?
Now he's going to be the starter.
Oh, wow.
And he is a guy that has true NFL talent. He's not a first rounder or anything like that, but he is an NFL guy. And I think that this last 2 weeks, the little bit of time that he got in the Ohio State game, and I think he may even have played a little bit in like 8 to 10 plays in the Wisconsin game, and having this bye week, 2 weeks to come around. I think he's going to be a difference maker in this game also, which really brings up the more aggressive stuff that Pete was talking about. He can be a lot more aggressive with a true corner on the field, because at this point he's been covering up with for the corners with the safeties, but unfortunately all of our safeties were getting hurt. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, AJ, on the last podcast, Dad and I had our predictions. I predicted a Nebraska victory of 28-27. Dad predicted a Nebraska loss of 21-35. So what is your prediction for the Purdue game?
I would say, 31-24 us.
All right. I like it.
Okay, now can I amend mine now?
You can amend yours, but if I'm right, you still lose the bet.
Okay, I'm good with you. I'm good with that. But I actually want to swing mine in favor of the Huskers now, too. And I would say about the same score as AJ, too, actually. About 31-24. Something like that is what I think we're going to end up. And I think one of those is going to be a trash touchdown by Purdue maybe late in the game. So it'll actually be a 31-17, and then they'll score late to make it 31-24.
All right. Very good, very good. Like to see this optimism. This is reminding me of Tommy Frazier actually has a podcast that I've started listening to, and I thought it was interesting on one of the they were talking about like the negativity around the program right now and firing Mike Riley and all that stuff. And he was making the point like, okay, you look at our schedule, in terms of where we were at the beginning of the season, did you think we were going to beat Oregon? Well, Oregon was a, probable loss. Do you think we were going to beat Wisconsin? Do you think we were going to beat Ohio State? Well, no. So really, the Northern Illinois loss is unacceptable. But that's really the only thing that's gone off the, prediction, the standard prediction of this year. Now, obviously,
but for me, I genuinely thought we were going to beat Wisconsin. I did. I thought we were the better team than Wisconsin. If you look at the recruiting rankings over recent years, if you look at the kind of talent that we had and the presumed effectiveness that we were going to get this year with our new quarterback, who was more in line with the talent, skills, etc., that Mike Riley and Langsdorf wanted. My expectation going into the season was that we were going to be more effective offensively. Now, I will concede that what happened to us at Wisconsin with our defense basically laying down and getting its ass kicked was something that I did not expect and wouldn't have anticipated. But like you said, if we're just a little bit more effective offensively in that first half, we're ahead by 10, maybe more points in the Wisconsin game, and they're not running the football. They're not lining up and smashing us because they're instead trying to throw the football to catch up. And as a result, they're playing into our hands a little bit more. And they never discover that they can just kick our ass by lining up and smashing the ball 26 times out of 30, which is what they did.
Right. And so transitioning into that, this is mostly to AJ, since Dad and I talked about this last week. What are your kind of thoughts on the season as it stands right now, Mike Riley's job security, and Bill Moos as the new AD?
The season, I think, is going like I thought it would. And, I think at this point they may end up 6-6, but that's not going to be enough. I hope it's not enough to save his job, because I've talked to your dad about this in the past, and I don't think I mentioned it this summer when we spoke on the podcast before, Alex. But I from the get-go, I wasn't enamored with this Mike Riley. I like him as a man. I mean, everybody is. How do you not like a guy like that? But as a coach, he's just not, he's never really been there at all. And from the beginning, I wasn't crazy about the hire. But when he lost to Illinois, Illinois 2 years ago.
I was there.
That was a horrible loss.
Miserable.
Now, that was to where everybody is freaking out about the Northern Illinois this year. That's where I was with the Illinois loss 2 years ago. And I thought he should have been fired then, right after that game. And I believe that ever since, that the guy doesn't have the ability to coach at a place like Nebraska. He doesn't know what the expectations are. He must not, because he's definitely not delivering in any way, shape, or form. Now, as far as Moose coming in, I think, when it was all said and done, and I started reading about this guy and his past and everything, it sounds like that every program he's been associated with, he's done really big positive things for him. So I'm hopeful that he can do. He couldn't do anywhere near as bad as what Eichhorst did. I mean, that guy was terrible from the get-go. That whole thing, that was just as bad as hiring Mike Riley. It was done without the backing and without the people that they needed to speak to. They never even spoke to Tom Osborne about hiring this guy. I mean, how in the heck do you do that? Your AD, your in-house AD, and you don't even bother to ask him about what his opinion is on the next guy coming in to do that job. It was a little bit crazy for that to happen. But this guy looks like that he could be a real positive thing in the future. So Riley's gone. Moose, I think, will be okay. I'm not sure who the coach is going to be. I'm thinking it's going to be Scott Frost, and I'm kind of hoping for that, even though I've got a little reservation about him, or somebody like Chip Kelly, like your dad has talked about in the past. But I think him coming to Lincoln's a long shot. But if it isn't Frost, then I think somebody like Kelly would be okay in my book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had mentioned to me before, Dad, that you'd received some information that Chip Kelly almost certainly won't be coming to Nebraska.
That is correct. And I still stand by that now. Now my more recent thoughts are Les Miles being a consideration because his son is a redshirt freshman on the team, and he's a guy that obviously has reputation and history. Has shown he can be a recruiter. He can build a program, a division at a Power 5 program, et cetera, et cetera. And frankly, I think he, in the right set of circumstances with the right money, would absolutely be interested in the Nebraska program to get himself back in the mix, and could do some incredible things for us. And there's a few others too. But if Scott Frost continues to do what he's doing, I think there's going to be an enormous amount of momentum for us to at least pursue Scott. Now, Scott may, in fact, say, no, I want to stay and see what I can do at my current role at UCF. Or he may say, I'm going to take the Tennessee job, for example, that's likely to come open, or maybe the A&M job, I don't know, although that guy seems to have stabilized his situation in A&M a little bit.
And UCLA also.
UCLA stabilized too, because they won a big game this past weekend, and I have a feeling he's safe. So that's good news for us. Frankly, I want all these other borderline coaches to become safe. I want them to do well so that they become safe. So the only two that we're probably looking at is Tennessee and us, and then we have a much better shot of eventually landing a pretty damn good coach. I could see Les Miles also being very interested in the Tennessee job.
Right.
Back in the SEC again.
Right. I think I saw something about it was an SB Nation article on like Nebraska versus Tennessee in terms of like, if you're Scott Frost, if you're a coach who could potentially get either job, and the downsides for Nebraska were obvious, that the recruiting is going to be a lot harder and all that stuff. Yep. But with Tennessee, they brought up the fact that you're going to have to play a much harder schedule, against all these tough teams in the SEC, whereas we have the weaker side of the Big Ten Conference. So there might be more potential for success in that regard, as well as, the devotion of.
I think there's great truth in that. I mean, if you look, going back to the Bo Pelini time frame, that the talent that Bo Pelini inherited when he first started, that was good. Yeah. Okay, and if you had a decent coach, okay. A guy who really knew what they were doing and could recruit during that whole time frame. Yep. So, there's no reason why we shouldn't already be on our trajectory upward again. Maybe not national championship, but certainly conference championship discussion consistently. So that's the thing that's frustrating for us as Nebraska fans is to recognize that all the things are there for us to be successful. We just need that person that can recruit reasonably well and then use the talent. We have misused our talent through most of the Bo Pelini and all of the Mike Riley era in such a way that we've underperformed as a program. And that's what's got Nebraska fans so frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I believe it was in the summer podcast where we were talking about, me being a younger guy growing up in this era of, mediocrity, of rebuilding for Nebraska, never seeing the championship days of old, as it were. But in those early years of Bo Pelini, when we had Ndamukong Suh and we legitimately had like one of the best defenses in the entire country, we could have won that Big 12 championship game. We could have been, a top 10 caliber team if we just had any kind of an offense.
Right. We had no semblance of any kind of offense. Nothing. Yeah. It was completely vacant.
Yeah. So
and that's the point, is that just a little bit of total collective capability for the offense defense program, and we have far greater success in those years. Absolutely true.
Yep. I totally agree. All right. Well, is there any other topic you guys want to bring up here?
So the question is that if we end up 6-6 like AJ's projecting, and he's our expert projector because he's the one that actually is even close to where we were likely to end up. So So
I'm hope I'm wrong.
to,
Just I'll put it that way.
to put it this way, I think it's going to be really difficult for the new athletic director to fire a 7-6 bowl-winning coach.
Yeah.
At this point, they're going to give him another year. They have to. They just have to.
Alex, did you see any of the articles about Moose and how he handled the Mad Pirate out there at Washington State, and how the first 3 years that he was out there, they were losing like crazy, but he hung in there with him, and now it's paying huge dividends.
Right.
Interesting. Well, I totally believe that. Was the Washington State guy, though, was it his guy that he hired?
Yes.
The Moose hired Leach, and he stuck with him through 3 really horrible years.
And he hired Leach when Leach left college football a year or two prior to that, in kind of a muddy mess out of Texas Tech, in which he got fired and was departing because of supposedly mistreatment of players and all this kind of crap, which if you knew the circumstances, you kind of understood that it really wasn't necessarily his fault, but it sure sounded bad on the surface. So obviously Moose saw through the media coverage and recognized that this guy had really done some amazing things, and then hired him, So he looked beyond the headlines, so to speak, which is a good sign.
Yeah. Yep. I just and obviously, like we talked about this before on last week's podcast, if Mike Riley found it in him to pull out like this, even or a 7-5 victory, or like you say, a 7-6 victory, through the rest of this,
with a bowl win,
right? With a bowl win in the rest of the season, it would be 8-5, 8-5 if he didn't lose to anybody except Penn State from here on out. Then it definitely becomes trickier. But at the same time, I feel like with the pressure of, Scott Frost, like especially if Scott Frost keeps winning, this idea that we're going to go through a year next year where we play a very difficult schedule, and we're going to have, middling short-term coach Mike Riley here versus this, potentially bright future of this young and up-and-coming coach. Like, it's going to be an interesting thing to weigh on people's minds.
Right. Of course, the only one that matters is Bill Moose. Right? I mean, that's the guy that needs to make that decision. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if I'm him, he has a troubling decision to say, do I stick with this guy who's maybe moderated the team a little bit late in the year, which is kind of Mike Riley's MO. He starts slow, and then he stabilizes the team, and his stabilizing influence ends up leading them to, because they learn that they have to do it on their own, but they end up 6-6. Okay, then they go to a moderate bowl game and they win. Now they're 7-6. Can't fire the guy for that, but can you? Yeah. Or do you fire him now because you have Scott Frost available and that's your window? You got to go after him, or do you accept that? You know what? We're going to give Mike Riley another year. We're going to let him go through the gauntlet that is our schedule next year, knowing that Scott Frost stays at UCF for one more year, and then after one more year, and we get our asses handed to us all through next year. And,
Jesus.
And then you hire Scott Frost. Or do you have to worry about a Tennessee program coming in and knocking on Scott Frost's door and saying, "Hey,
I got $7 million.
I got $5 million maybe ready to hand to you, and you can have one of the premier programs in the history of the SEC right now. Yeah. It's yours."
Right.
In the middle of recruiting country, Tennessee, Alabama. I mean, that's a heartbed of recruiting.
Yeah.
They're right next to Ohio. Shit, that's a great place to be. So I don't know. I think Moose has to take. I think he has to pull the trigger. I just and then accept that the first year of Scott Frost era might be devastating. It might be a 3-7, 3-9 type of season, because our schedule is brutal, no doubt.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Obviously, we've talked about it before. I like Mike Riley, and you look to last year, which was the opposite of what you just described, where we got off to the 7 wins, 7-0 early on, and then we lost to Wisconsin, we lost to Ohio State, and then things spiraled from there.
Right.
And then I think back to that first year, which AJ was talking about at the Illinois game, where that was the year where we had like those 3 or 4 games where we were one play away from winning, and we had all these like. It was almost like we were cursed. We had all these super close losses, that really sunk our season fast. And I just, seeing like the energy that the guys had in the Ohio State game and how Mike Riley just looked kind of defeated. Like, I just don't feel like he's a guy who's going to get us anywhere more than like an 8-win season. I feel like he's that type of coach.
But what do you do when he beats Purdue, and then we get to play? We go to Minnesota and play Minnesota away, but we also play Northwestern at home. And let's say we beat those two. Now we're 6-4, and we lose to Iowa or whatever. I mean, and we lose to Penn State, and we're 6-6, or maybe we're 7-5. I mean, are any of those records? When you boil it down, are any of those acceptable? And in the traditional sense of Nebraska, the answer is hell no. So the question that you asked, or that you just stated, projection-wise in the future, what do you see for Mike Riley if he gets to 6-6 this year, or even 7-5? Is that still give you a sense that he's going to be the guy that can get us to winning 10, 11, 12 games and contending for Big Ten championships and national championships in the next 4, 5, or 6 years while he's still a coach? Is that going to happen?
Right. Well, and the way I look at it is he's got to look at it and realize, okay, if Mike Riley gets to 7-6, I'll give him another year. We have our tough schedule next year. It goes badly, like you say, we're like 3 or 4 wins. Then you definitely fire him. But now, who knows what the coaching landscape's like. Maybe it's better. Maybe there's some guy, or maybe, Scott Frost is at Tennessee now, and you had your opportunity last year and you missed it. So he's really just throwing the dice if he's going to bet on next year.
He's playing chicken with Tennessee at this point. Because the question is, you would almost have to reach out to Scott Frost this year and say, Scott Frost, if offered, would you leave UCF to take the Tennessee job? And if Scott Frost or his representation said, absolutely, we would do that if it was offered, then Nebraska may need to act now. If he instead got the answer that said, no, we really want to give UCF a chance, we'd like to have a couple more years, then you say, okay, and we'll check back later kind of thing. But here's the thing, UCF, this might be their pinnacle year, Next year, Scott might end up being 6-6, and now the heat is off, and no one wants Scott Frost because he's the guy that couldn't sustain success, and no one wants him. So Scott's got to strike while the iron's hot if I'm Scott Frost. So I have a feeling Scott Frost is going to be coaching somewhere other than UCF no matter what next season. If it's not Nebraska, it's going to be Tennessee or somewhere else in the Power 5 conference landscape. I'm convinced. So this is our window. If we want Scott Frost, it's got to happen now.
Yep.
Hey, Alex, I got one more thing to throw at you. One more stat. In the 25 years of Mike Riley coaching college football, he's had one 10-win season.
Wow.
10-plus season. All the rest of them in college football. All the rest of them have been 9 wins or less.
Right.
In 25 years. So what's the likelihood that he's going to turn it around and get us to the point where he can win 11 or 12 games and get us to where we want to go, where we've been before? I don't think it's highly likely.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to throw out there also that I just remembered reading this morning is that Scott Frost is good friends, of course, with an awful lot of ex-Husker players. He's got a couple of ex-Huskers on his coaching staff, if I'm not mistaken. But one of his best friends is his center, Aaron Taylor. And Aaron Taylor came out in his on his Facebook page and basically said Scott Frost was coming to Nebraska.
I actually saw that online as well. I read that. It was talking about how they're having a kid soon, and the grandparents would love to have the grandchild out in Nebraska and all that.
Because they still live in Lincoln. Or not in Lincoln, but they still live in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's one of his best friends. There's also been a couple of other friends of his that have piped up here recently, and
made it clear.
Is coming out saying, yeah, he'll take the job. If he's offered the job, it's his. He'll take it.
Yep.
So I'm thinking it's there. I'm thinking unless Riley really pulls it really, really, really far out of his ass. Yeah, he's got to. Which we saw him beat Michigan State
when they were
the number 2 team in the nation. It's just nuts, but we saw it happen. So we know that in college football it can happen. If he does that and is 8-5, it'll be just the most amazing thing, and we'll have to keep him for another year. But does anybody really think that he's going to get us to where we want to get? No, I don't think so.
Especially at his age and stuff. He had his window of opportunity, and he's had 3 years, and it's taken him 3 years to try to position his staff where he wants it to be.
Yeah.
And even now, with the Diaco hire, I think there's still some huge question marks of whether or not that was a good hire.
Yeah.
Because he does not fit with where college football is going. The great defensive coordinators in college football right now, Michigan's defensive coordinator, Miami's defensive coordinator, Clemson, Alabama, all those defensive coordinators, guess what they all do? They're all super aggressive.
Yeah.
Whereas Nebraska's defense leading? It's leading to a 3-4 defense, which is designed to be aggressive because you have only 3 down linemen and 4 linebackers. The whole idea is movement and aggressive and being able to come from play all kinds of different directions. And what do? We do a 3-4 and we're passive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the worst combination, and yet that's what we've hired. Yeah. We've had a guy that has that philosophy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and last thought, I guess, is that, in other programs, sometimes they'll fire a coach after, 1 year, 2 years, with the whole, so the whole giving them 3 years isn't a universal rule when it comes to coaching and stuff. So if Riley finishes the season 6-6, he could still be fired potentially if we know that the Scott Frost iron is hot, as it were. If he's 7-5 at the end of the season, if he only loses to Penn State, I find it really hard a scenario where Bill Moos could justify firing him there.
I kind of agree with you there, unless it's already decided now, and maybe he knows that, but we don't, right? And that would be the other thing. But you're right, Alex. If he were able to find a way to win every game except Penn State, it would be hard for the national media and everyone outside of that athletic department or Nebraska fans who are already decided that they want somebody other than Mike Riley. Those would be the only people that would agree with a firing at that point. Mm-hmm. So you would run the risk of another alienation situation. So I totally agree with you.
Yep.
But it's been a long podcast, but a great 50th podcast, Alex. Do you realize we've been doing this 50 times? We've done this now.
I know. Well, it's weird to think, we've been doing it for over 2 years. We started out when I graduated and all that. So, it's a big milestone.
And most of them, while you're in LA and I was in Traverse City, and now I'm traveling all over the country. And by golly, with technology, we're still doing it.
That's right, man. We're making it happen.
That's right.
So I want to thank all the listeners out there for listening to this special 50th episode. We hope you'll be listening for 50 more as time goes on. We're going to be coming back next week, most likely, to talk about the Purdue game. I'm going to be traveling, so that will be a little weird, but we'll figure it out. And big thanks to AJ for being our special guest. We knew we wanted to do something big for this 50th episode, so thank you for joining us.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And so if you enjoyed this podcast out there, you can email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can find us online at collegefootballthrowdown.podomatic.com. You can find us on iTunes as well. You can leave a comment on Podomatic's website like AJ does from time to time, or leave us reviews and ratings on iTunes. Let us know what you think of the podcast, what we can improve on, all that fun stuff.
Hey, Alex, how do you find us on iTunes? If they type in College Football Throwdown, they'll find it?
That's right.
College Football Throwdown.
That's Brandon for you right there.
There you go.
All right. And so until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red!